Have you ever wondered how to increase employee productivity or why employees quit? On today's episode on All Things LOCS, our premiere episode, we're going to be getting into this and so much more. My name is Antonio Garcia. I'm the co-host of All Things LOCS, and I'm here with Dr. Dan Neissany. What are some of the things we're going to be diving into today?
Well, today we're going to definitely be diving into all aspects of leadership, operations, culture, and strategies. And really, first and foremost, is going to be understanding how those four anchors really work together to build a strong business, whether in healthcare or not. But what you're going to be getting out of each episode going forward is really going to be actionable tips that you can apply to your business, healthcare practice for these four anchors, as well as getting expert interviews from people within healthcare and from industry leaders outside of healthcare, because quite frankly, we want to learn from the best.
So I want to jump into just getting to know you just for our audience members and jumping into a little bit about your background. So tell us a little bit about you. I know that you are an incredible Dallas Cowboys fan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. That's not true.
That's not true at all. It's kind of disgusting. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and also just your understanding of LOCS in general.
Ooh, okay. So trying to keep this as short as possible. Backstory, parents entrepreneurs, did not follow that pathway. They owned a mom and pop bagel shop. I went into healthcare, got my doctorate in physical therapy, started out as a clinician in an orthopedic setting, and basically just spent the first 7 years, give or take, just working my way up, entry-level therapist, establishing myself as a clinician first and foremost, and then took the plunge into leadership, although it was kind of forced upon me, which we will definitely get into that. From the standpoint of the transition going from a staff clinician to a director is definitely a lot more responsibilities, looking at business very differently. And for me, having the ability to have a CEO whose background was in Wall Street immensely helped me from the standpoint of understanding business, considerably different than I would have if I just looked at it from a pure healthcare standpoint. And over these last, I'd say 7 to 10 years, I've really spent a lot of time working on myself as a person to be a better leader, and then really taking the time to understand how that correlates to developing a culture that is going to make a winning organization, and then understanding the intersection of building systems and operations, and knowing how all of that then contributes to your strategic growth. But even honestly looking at that, you could have great people, you could have great leaders. If you're still not having an understanding of how to grow a business, which is what healthcare is, still a business, you're still going to being stagnant. So it's really understanding all four is critical to just the overall growth of an organization.
Yeah, I actually love that you said that when you first got into healthcare, is what you're saying is that you just went in purely as a specialist, and then one of your mentors that happened to be a healthcare had a background in Wall Street. And so when you were learning leadership and learning business principles, they weren't super hyper-focused on healthcare, that it was that actually it allowed you to kind of cherry pick some of those good things that grew some of the businesses that you worked with. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, it's the person who goes into healthcare has a certain way of thinking, a little more analytical. They're not always the greatest business people because of that.
Very risk
similar.
averse.
Yeah, very similar to like engineers. So having an outsider's perspective, so to speak, is just such a big help, and that's really what has kind of led me in the direction to even get to this point of being able to take other disciplines and businesses and fields and see what works for them and how to incorporate it into healthcare. And that's where he came in huge, which is being able to look at hospitality, look at finance, and see how you can bring those things together to form something that's really amazing, still very patient-focused, but still very also focused on growth and understanding how that parlays back into patient care.
Man, that's such a good thing. What are some things that you kind of extracted from those general tried and true business principles that most people, kind of what you said, that are a little bit analytically leaning, they're straight up in the world of healthcare, but what are some of those points that were extracted from those other businesses that like, hey, I wish these doctors knew more of this. I wish that they kind of appreciated this side of things even further, and that would completely change and revolutionize their patient outcomes. Their revenue would be a big one too. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I think it's really two things. Number one is I find that most people in healthcare is very, you have two viewpoints. It's either you're insanely altruistic and you just want to give. And that's what most healthcare practitioners are.
Givers.
Yeah, they're
givers.
Purely givers. But then it's hard for that mindset to really operate at a high level in business.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the other side of it, which is forget about the patient care and let's just focus on the revenue. So it's very,
just get the money.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what you see. You see it a lot in like healthcare, hospital organizations, and being able to understand that you can do both. You can provide great care to patients, you can take care of your employees, and you can get great outcomes and still make a lot of money at the same time. So that was one aspect. And then
it's probably not destroying yourself in the process too. It's like you can still accomplish both, but that doesn't mean you have to work twice as much.
No,
that's a misconception.
Yeah, it's not one or the other, and it's not meaning you have to work any harder than you're already doing.
Yeah,
because I know most clinicians are like, "How can I work any harder than I'm already doing it?" It's not a matter of putting in more hours. It's just really knowing what you're really doing on a day-to-day, how to maximize patient care, and that leads into the bigger concept of how to actually just incorporate a hospitality-like mentality into healthcare. And that's the other aspect that I got, honestly, from the CEO was my mentor. He really took a lot from the Ritz-Carlton of going above and beyond with, their customer service is world-renowned, and how to take that and bring that into healthcare without really sacrificing anything.
Yeah.
You're not sacrificing much time, much effort, much money. It's just really a strong singular focus on the person in front of you, which in healthcare is usually the patient, but also understanding how to then focus on the employees to give the best patient care. So it's really, I would say that's honestly the biggest lesson. That was his whole thing was concierge. And that was hard for me to understand at the beginning because I felt like that meant just like being almost like not a slave to the patient, but just kind of like at their beck and call. And then like as I understood what that really meant, it was just high level care, which really is what we should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
So it just made total sense.
Yeah. I'd say like that's probably the personal point that you and I talked about with your background in healthcare, with working with those different businesses, and same with me, that it just like there's this kind of almost political talk of like there are some human rights in healthcare, like people deserve to be taken care of at a high level, like they should be receiving the gold standard of customer service. So why is that active in these other industries? Like why is this something at the forefront at the Ritz-Carlton, but it doesn't feel like it is maybe in other places? So that was, I felt like kind of the catalyst where when people are sick, when people are hurt, when people are at the lowest point, they should be in a place where everyone is trained to exemplify these things at a high level. And one of them is customer service. But it's like, isn't customer service kind of an extension of kind of the culture and the strategy of the organization, and it's expressed in customer service?
Yeah, so now the challenge, so the other viewpoint will definitely be, well, how can I do that when I'm seeing just a shit ton of patients? Like I'm getting overburdened. I would love to do that, but it's feasibly impossible.
Yeah.
And that is one of the challenges in healthcare is you have more work for individuals, you have less reimbursements from insurance companies. So, it's common sense, right? You make less money, what do you got to do? See more patients to make up for it. It's like kind of going to McDonald's. They charge less, they got to see a lot more.
Right.
But it's like really basic principles. And what a lot of people forget to factor in is just what the actual effect of providing that kind of care looks like. And this is where a lot of people miss the boat on understanding patient referrals, repeat business, so you get a lot of business for free, essentially. You already paid for the marketing. So you get people keep coming back. You get them to refer other people to you. And it actually lightens the load and reduces your burden as opposed to saying, hey, we need more patients. So let's spend more on marketing and get this place busy. It's a cycle that really needs to be broken. And the best way to do that is to understand how can we provide quality care without that turning into meaning we got to spend 30 minutes with each patient, which I know is not feasible in most scenarios. You don't have 30 minutes. I mean, the average visit is like 8 to 9 minutes, give or take. So it's really how to maximize the time you do have with somebody, whether that means being more empathetic, how to make their check-in process a lot easier as opposed to having them fill out 40 forms like in the office. How can you make that process more efficient through email or using an iPad? Right. Little things like that go a very long way.
100%. And it feels like this was kind of, the creation of All Things LOCS is that to actually break down some of these business anchors from leadership, operation, culture, and strategy is to, talk to executives, to CEOs, entrepreneurs, influencers, leaders, and all these other different industries, and how you and I can take those same tactics, those approaches, and apply it, especially to healthcare, but that people at home, you guys can take those and apply it to your respective business and apply it to other companies that you're working with. And that's kind of the whole point of this, is that there's these really great tips and tricks that are dominant in some places and are lacking in others, and that creates these voids that the market tends to feel. And it's just healthcare is something that's really close and personal to us.
Yes. Obviously I have the background in as a physical therapist. I forget, what's your connection with healthcare? I mean, your background is more in business itself. Yeah. So where do you see the connection between just business and healthcare? And then where do you see your own background as a big advantage for you kind of being in this space, so to speak?
Yeah. So I would say that it is, when it comes to some industries, there's like misconceptions, there's myths, there's the facts of what the industry is, and there's some myths of the industry. And especially when it comes to healthcare, like I actually had to get some mentorship on this from one of my coaches, Eddie Wilson, that when it comes to healthcare, it's not really quite different than any other business. You still have to have patients. You have to have customers know about your product or your service. You still have to deliver on great customer service. You still have to, provide billing. There's still accounts receivable. There's still a lot of mechanisms in there that are not any different than a burger joint or different than like a real estate company or a marketing agency. It doesn't really matter that those principles are the same no matter what. It's just the difference is that when people make mistakes in a marketing agency, okay, you might lose a little bit of money. But in the world of healthcare, you make some mistakes, that is a hellacious medical malpractice lawsuit, or someone dies. And don't you think that these people need to be equipped with the best possible strategies, the best possible approaches to culture, the best possible approaches to operations, and also just learning different techniques on being a better leader? Because when my grandma's sick, or when my mom is going through it, or just recently, I took my kids to the hospital a little bit earlier this week, and my boys are twin boys. They're barely turning 1. They're just little guys. I really wish that they would have had a much, much, much better experience. It wasn't all that great. And a lot of it is because of ignorance. They just don't know. They just don't know that this is what you should do. And I feel like, especially with my side of the family, like my mom nursed in oncology. She was also occupational nurse. I have family members that are med techs to occupational, to geneticists, to pediatricians. The list goes on. And it's like, I took it personal when things happened a few years ago with COVID, of like, they just need to learn more of the stuff that we are applying in these other industries, and regular mom and pop people that are just, creating their own clinic. Like, I think they should know them too. So to me, I felt it's a bit of a calling to take everything that I've learned and also share it with those people that honestly are the ones that heal us when we're at our lowest point.
So then, what do you think? What do you think could be done to improve just the overall business aspect knowledge when it comes to opening a clinic, or what do you think could be done differently? I
think it first starts with awareness, and you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit earlier. That, like, it's like what you mentioned. I'm a doctor, therefore I should go to learn about business specifically for doctors. And you mentioned Ritz-Carlton. I was like, well, you worked with an organization. You were directly responsible and basically 13xing an organization in a matter of 3 years, which is crazy. But you guys studied not other clinics. You studied the Ritz-Carlton. Okay. So if you just expand your level of awareness and figure out what are the things and tactical and practical strategies that are being applied in other industries, and maybe fusing or evolving some of those to apply it to your practice or to a clinic or to your hospital, it's like, could you have those same results? Could you have something that's far more robust? Are there ways that we can reduce down errors or whatever? So I think it's just level of awareness is like expanding the mind of this particular sector to appreciate what's working in other industries. And I really look forward to the lineups that we have there for All Things LOCS are going to be through the roof. And like learning what works there with all these with these 4 anchor points is going to be really exciting.
So where do you extract the most value by looking at other fields? Or, like you said, I didn't look to other healthcare practices for business ideas. I looked at it as just clinically, what are they doing that could benefit us from a standpoint of direct interaction with the patient when it comes to maybe treatments.
Yeah.
But when it came to business, it was more about, all right, what are other companies doing? Maybe even what's an Amazon maybe doing that we can pick from them. But where do you see the value for healthcare clinics and hospitals looking outside of medicine for business, business tactics and advice?
Oh, for sure. So I would break that down into a couple of different ways. One of them is that you first want to appreciate what you have. Business is offense and defense. What are we offensively doing for the organization, and how are we making sure we're mitigating risk? Offense, defense. And there's a thought process. I think Charles Munger is the one that also was talking about this, how can I destroy my own practice? Like, if someone were to take advantage of my practice, what are the weak points of it that can be exploited that it could then be destroyed? And then, all right, and then you look on the other side, what do I need to do to fill in those gaps? And then once you identify those, then it's like, who is doing that at a high level? That doesn't necessarily need to be in healthcare. If it is in healthcare, great. If they're not, cool. It's really easy at that point to figure out who is doing high-level customer service, who is who operationally speaking is very, very advanced, who's leveraging AI the best way possible, whatever. It's actually really easy at that point, but you want to go through that process to identify that. And then from there, whether it is a customer service issue, it is a strategy issue, it is a leadership thing, then I think at that point you're able to research a little bit better. And I'm excited in providing some of those options for us with BPS, Best Practice Strategies, our own company, but then also just what we're doing here with our guests and what we discover.
So then, and that brings up a really good point, which is I look at the companies that are doing really well.
Yeah.
And, where numbers obviously important, revenue is important, paints a picture, but it doesn't tell you the full picture. So how does a company that's doing real good, they've been around for maybe 5-10 years, increasing every year, how would they know, hey, look, I need to assess this aspect of my company. I need to assess my leadership, or I need to assess my systems and my operation. Like, how would I know that?
So this is where I think why the top performers in the world have coaches. Like Kobe Bryant, may rest in peace, bless his soul. He always went after coaches. When you look at Richard Branson, he still has coaches. Tony Robbins has coaches. Some of the best in the world have coaches. This is a time where when people are starting to ask themselves like that question of like, okay, I've taken maybe the business as far as I can go. I'm looking at it through a keyhole. I'm starting to feel like there could be some blind spots, or could there be some areas of my business that I'm not aware of that's holding me back? Then at that point, it's wise, it's smart, it's intelligent to look outside of you. Now, it's kind of what doctors, or like even if you were a patient, hey, I want to figure out how to get better with my body. It's like, at what point are you going to talk to a nutrition? At what point are you going to talk to a personal trainer? At what point are you going to talk to a doctor or whatever? So once you kind of get to that point, I think it's actually healthy and wise and intelligent to look at consulting firms. You want to look at different agencies, different business coaches. You want to like subscribe to us. You want to look at just other things that open up your level of awareness so that you can figure out whether a strategy or a tactic or a person or organization could be a good fit for you. I think that's a huge thing to do, is to look outside of you.
Yeah, so I feel like that's a really important point, because it requires, I think, two things simultaneously, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It requires a good check of your own ego.
Super.
To not just assume that
you know everything.
Yeah, I know everything. Yeah. And to really, I think it also speaks to just something that we're having some challenges with in society as a whole, which is being open-minded to other people's ideas.
Yeah.
And to concepts that we didn't come up with. And definitely in medicine, one of the mentalities I've seen is we stick with the tried and true method. And you don't
want to deviate from that.
Yeah, like even, where I've seen that is, hey, we've been doing this kind of surgery for the last 40 years, so why would I want to learn something that is maybe more efficient and causes less pain on the patient? I know this works. And it's just like, all right, why are we still doing something from the 1970s or 1980s when there's new technology coming out that can make it far superior. So how would you say then somebody should go about, potentially being a little more open-minded, or where did they even start the process of, hey, look, I think I'm amazing, but I'm still maybe open to somebody else kind of coming in and looking under the hood, so to speak.
I think this is where, and this could be you if you're watching this, is like Dan just described me down to a T. If that's you, is that you kind of have to look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, like, why did I do this to begin with? Did I do this to really help people, be that giver, is what you say? Or am I just taking money? Am I just throwing people into a surgery or throwing people into, or prescribing something that I'm just automatic on? So you want to ask yourself, like, are you really here to help people? Are you really here to offer the best possible customer service, the best patient outcomes, the best patient experience? And if you are, then maybe consider that some of the things that either kind of what you said, like, hey, maybe it's outdated. Hey, maybe there's an improved way of doing this. It's kind of silly to continue to practice medicine the way that we did in the 1770s or 40 years ago. So what is the mindset that's needed in order to continue to research and adopt the new techniques of today, to continue to push that? But that's just one side of it. Another side of it is like, how do I need to reorganize or improve or elevate my current business operations to support that? It's a two-way thing. So they do have to, because you're basically talking about cognitive dissonance. They're just being closed-minded. If you're closed-minded and you just want to stick with it, cool. You and me, Dan, are going to work with your competitor, and we're going to smash you straight up. That's what we're going to do, because it does take a type of person is to say, look, are there areas of my game, if there's areas of my business, there's areas of how I'm working with patients that can be adjusted a little bit, that has a significant compound effect over time, and we're just going to be, I know, are doing a way better job than other people in our marketplace.
Yeah, I mean that speaks. Man, that's so good. I think where a lot of people miss the target, so to speak, is they're not focused on just constant and never-ending improvement. So if you're making revenue and potentially you're growing every single year. And it's also important to know that obviously if you're not growing past what inflation is, you're not actually growing. So for those of you that just want to have a strategy of, I'm going to stay the same or we're going to stay stagnant, that's a failing strategy. Obviously these last few years where inflation was very elevated, if you didn't beat it, you lost. So knowing how you're going to continue to grow and how to focus on continuous improvement, I think when people look at the term innovation, they think it's like this big ass, like, hey, we created the new iPhone or this new massive technology, as opposed to just how do we just get better. That reminds me of, just you saying that reminds me of such an incredible quote, which is, and I don't know who said it or what, but that dissatisfaction is the mother of all innovation. So maybe you're closed-minded, maybe your business is maybe hitting a glass ceiling. Who knows? But at the end of the day, you're feeling a little dissatisfied. I could be making more money. I don't need to be dealing with all this drama. There's a better way of running my company. There's a better way of running my life. I've been wanting to break from $5 million a year to $10 million a year, and I've been at $5 million a year the last 3 years. Whatever the case may be, you're just dissatisfied. And again, dissatisfaction is the mother of all innovation. That sometimes that's just what it takes. That if you're feeling that, like, okay, this is a time to innovate and find new ways to effectively do the same thing. And the thing is, the cool thing about it is that that's constantly happening all around us in all kinds of different industries. There's so many great leaders that are just pioneering some pretty amazing things, especially in AI or even just with even just with business strategy and just the idea of learning from those and applying it to not just with healthcare, but in any other industry. If it could apply here, it could apply to you, right? So why do you think so many people wait to reach that level of dissatisfaction as opposed to just being proactive and looking at things and say, man, it's going great. How can we make it better? Why do so many people do the opposite and wait till, to your point, my life's out of balance, or business is crushing it, my home life sucks, or my home life is amazing, but the business is failing.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to do something, as opposed to just being proactive and saying, how can I make it better even when it's going amazing?
Yeah. So it really varies. I would say that in other industries, people are constantly pivoting because per the nature of the industry, you have to innovate to live, to survive. So let's think of like things in technology. Like if your competitor came out with something a little bit ahead of you, your team was already working on, like you got to pivot quick. So you're constantly solution oriented. Healthcare, how are people trained there? If you make a mistake or if you miss a step in this protocol, what happens? So where other industries where it's kind of a little bit more okay to make mistakes, throw spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks, pivot, try, that's not quite the standard when it comes to healthcare. So you have all these people that are coming in that when they first got into healthcare, it's like maybe they're a surgeon, maybe they're a doctor, maybe it's a pediatrician, maybe it's a podiatrist, maybe it's a chiro, whatever. And then now they have to adopt that mindset into being an entrepreneur. They're not trained for that, not all of them. So it's like it's like trying to get someone to speak Italian when all they've ever known is Korean. It's like they just don't have that language. So there's a certain point where like, I think I need to learn this because of that dissatisfaction and that frustration. And that's what opens up that, typically that's what inspires people to open up their level of awareness and be like, all right, where else can I get some info to make this a little bit easier? So it's a conditioning thing. They're not taught to think that, not often. That's, I think, the biggest thing that we get, don't you think, with doctors? I didn't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I just think I think it's just people in general. You know, I think most of us are not proactive. The best of the best are, because they're focused on that. What does that next step look like for me? What's the next level look like? As opposed to just kind of keeping themselves stagnant or, you know, dare I say, mediocre.
Yeah.
I find that in healthcare, one of the aspects to your point of kind of connecting people to their why, so to speak, it's a big responsibility. So even if you're in a setting where it's not life and death, and maybe making a mistake isn't costing somebody a loved one, you can still hurt somebody. You know, if you can still hurt somebody, or if people are coming to you, they're coming to you for a reason. If you think about it, nobody wants to go to the doctor. There's not one person I think says, I love going to doctors. Everybody hates it.
Unless they're like a plastic surgeon.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love getting my both.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, right.
But for the most part, nobody wants to go see the doctor. So they're coming to you for a very specific reason. And once they step through the doors, that's a big responsibility that I feel that some people, and I'm not talking about anybody in particular, doctors or whoever, just if you're in that space, somebody's putting their trust in you. And it's not to be taken for granted. So there's that aspect of, all right, how do I just be the responsible person that I need to be? And then the other side of it is, how do I also run a business that can service people at the high level, and I can, service my own employees through bonuses, PTO, it's just things that we don't really think much about. New technology, like you pointed out, it's like, all right, I can't invest in AI if my practice is not making money, right? So when we look at things, and some people view,
it feels like it's fundamentals,
yeah, it's like, and I feel like there do have to be discussions based around financials and money, because I find that some people just view it as like a negative lens. It's like, ugh, disgusting, you're making money. It's like, well, you can't reinvest back into the organization if you're not making money. So for those of you that want to invest in AI and say, I don't have the capital for that, this is exactly what we're talking about. You need to build your capital up and your revenue so you can reinvest back into things that are going to actually help your patients get better at a faster level, and to reinvest back into your staff, because that is the lifeblood of the organization, are your employees. So it's a really good point. How would you say then to kind of take those different viewpoints of, I'm a practitioner and I'm connected to my why, but maybe I'm in an organization that is not so much, or maybe the manager's all in, but the person who actually owns the organization, they want to stay stagnant, or the other way around. Maybe the manager says, let's just keep it the way it is. and the owner says, let's pedal to the metal. How do you kind of balance out those opposing viewpoints?
So there's two schools of thought on that. One school of thought is just take ownership of anything that you have. If you're in a situation where you feel like things can get better, then you need to get better. Continue to personally develop, continue to sharpen your skills. Don't feel like your organization should hold you back. I feel like when you do that, you become such a magnet for abundance. I know it sounds a little foo-foo sometimes, but when you know you're an A player, continue to do A player stuff. You will find your home in time. Like you're going to have another organization that's a rock star, and they're able to identify talent quickly. That's in anything. That's in sports. It doesn't matter. So I would say for those people that are kind of in that spot, hey, keep your head on a swivel for other opportunities, but don't use your organization as an example for you to also be stagnant. Continue to fight that. And if it's on the flip side, I actually feel that you should adopt pretty much the same thing, whether it's you and it's your bosses that are being stagnant, whatever. But if it's you and maybe your team that's wanting to stay the same, well, you got to look at who's in charge here. Like who's ultimately liable for the success of the business? Is it you? Okay, well then attract the team that's going to help you get there. What got you here won't get you there. Not all accountants are created equal. An accountant that's running a Fortune 100 company, that team does not do a startup that's doing like a Taco Bell stand. It's not the same team. So that's where you need to recognize as a leader that, hey, I need to probably readjust my personnel. I need to look at my culture and maybe do it that way. But I want to switch gears here a little bit with the purpose of, All Things LOCS. So with All Things LOCS, we're excited to be talking to leaders, influencers, politicians, anyone that has like a game-changing. All right, so I'll kind of redo that. It's hard. I can't see you there. Dakota, should I redo that? Yeah, redo it. Okay. I can't see.
Just left it there. Okay. All right, I'll do the end.
So I saw that. Let's shift.
Cool. All right, then. So I want to shift gears with you here a little bit. So for us, like we're really fired up with All Things LOCS, this podcast, and this podcast is designed for us to talk to different leaders, different business moguls. The lineup that we have is going to be absolutely phenomenal. The people that are going to be coming onto this podcast are going to be the best of the best, displaying the gold standard in their respective business. And for us, it's actually really exciting that with these four anchors, with leadership, operation, culture, and strategy, which is what LOCS stands for, we want to extract all those things so people at home, you guys can use that, apply it to your own businesses. And then for us, we want to take a lot of those tactical, practical strategies, those mindset approaches, whatever the case may be, so we can help more people in healthcare. So I'm pretty fired up in taking this journey with you and really, really helping out the folks that maybe feel a little ignorant in some spots, which is just, I don't know. I'm struggling because I just don't know this stuff, which is okay. And then also the people that are already kicking ass, and they just need a couple of little golden nuggets that'll be like kerosene or adrenaline into their business.
Yeah, I mean, I live and breathe this, and I think you do too. So, and that's why we're saying here, true value comes from not just gaining knowledge, but gaining knowledge and then being able to share and help other people.
Yeah.
And, that's where being able to understand how leadership, operations, company culture, and strategic growth, how they all intersect together.
Yeah.
And why you can't just focus on one or the other. So if it's like, we need good leaders. Like, okay, but can they drive the growth of the company? Do they have good business ideas? Well, no. It's like, okay, then the hell are we talking about? Like, yes, you do need people that can rally the troops, but
to what mission? Like,
yeah, exactly.
What are we doing? Yeah, how do we get there?
Yeah, I mean, so being able to understand how those four concepts really intersect, and I know even just you spend an immense amount of time on this. I've spent a lot of time on it. It's really knowing what percentage, I think, so to speak, on each aspect. And what I mean by that is, all right, do we spend 90% of our time focusing on strategic growth, or do we spend 90% on culture? It's just, you got to figure out, I think where it comes into play is understanding what aspect is the biggest one for you, but knowing that you have to do all four.
Yeah.
So some clinics, they might be crushing it revenue-wise, and their leadership might suck. And that is possible. So if you think, oh, if they're doing well, that must mean leadership is great. No.
No.
No. They could have a toxic culture, and they could still be doing really well. So if that's you and saying, I'm crushing it financially, you might want to look at what's my turnover rate, things like that. And like I said, if you have great leadership, are they able to drive the company forward? Are they helping it grow?
Yeah.
So understanding these four aspects are really critical. I've looked at this as like you said, the four anchors of business. I'm sure other people say, well, what about this other stuff? It's like, these things are the four that are the most important. And the ancillary stuff that is obviously very important as well, marketing, things like that.
Yeah.
That's going to tie into your overall growth.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't know how to balance these aspects of a business, you're either going to struggle or you're going to leave a lot of revenue on the table. And that's really important. That's an important concept that I've come to really appreciate, which is you could do well and still lose a lot of revenue. So if you're making, like the example that we've spoken about, it's the company making $10 million a year, which is phenomenal, but what if they should have made 12 and they lost $2 million because of shitty systems, or they lost $2 million because they had many employees leave, mm-hmm. and it cost them a lot of money to replace those employees. So that's why I'm like, all these things
they matter.
Yeah, very, very much matter, and have to be focused on every single day.
Oh, for sure. And I think for us, we really appreciate the consequences of not doing this. I mean, how many businesses close their doors in their first year? How about the second year? How about the third year? So I had a friend that killed himself a little bit earlier this year, and this guy was a multimillionaire running multiple businesses, and it's because of the pressures of running business. The entrepreneurs are twice as likely to have suicidal thoughts and actually pull the trigger than non-entrepreneurs. I think it was 40% of entrepreneurs are suffering from sleep disorders or some kind of poor sleep condition. The list goes on. You could look at all these different statistics where it's being an entrepreneur is not easy.
No.
And if we can help them, I don't care if you're running restaurants. I don't care if you're running clinics. I don't care if you're running marketing agencies. It doesn't matter. That these things are tried and true at any business in any era. And they're only going to work if you're sharpening your mind along the way. And that's actually a component to the resiliency, the grit that's needed, the mindset that's needed, the openness that's needed, the quieting of the ego that's needed, pride, handling that too. So as long as people are constantly curious, as long as people are always asking themselves how can I improve? How can I make things better for people? Then this is actually the place for you. All Things LOCS is the place for you. This is the place that you want to continue to visit us week in, week out. Check it on the guests we're bringing in, the strategies that we're talking about, because they will make a significant difference in your business as long as you do them and you take extraordinary action. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, one of the things that I would be brutal honest with you, really pisses me off is even when I was back in school now, if you think I'm 20 years old, you're mistaken. I'm 41. So for me, being back in school was a while ago. But there's a push to have medical practitioners open their own clinic, which is phenomenal. And then they get zero training on how to run a business. And it's just what the hell are you doing? So, hey, advocate for you guys to get a business. So what? So you can fail? Mm-hmm. And you see that even on social media a lot too, where there's a big push for people to buy businesses. Baby boomers are kind of phasing out, so to speak. And then there's nothing on, all right, once you buy it, here's what you do. Mm-hmm. So you have to have concepts and you have to have ideas that work and plans that work. And just buying something or saying, it's not as easy as I open my doors and now patients are going to come. That's a mistake that I've seen so many times. Hey, I'm here now, but where the hell are all the patients?
Right.
Yeah, no shit. You actually have to know how to run a business, market, run ads. These are things that we just don't learn. And, man, it just really pisses me off because it sets a lot of people up for failure.
Yeah.
And then
you can have a brilliant doctor that actually really cares about the patient, but because they don't have this, they close. And now that patient or those people are forced to go to a competitor that sucks.
Yeah. And then, and then what you're seeing now too is a lot of doctors and just practitioners in general who they're getting burned out and they want to try to do their own thing, and they don't know what the hell to do.
Right.
And I hear a lot from doctors like, we don't get any business training, and it's bull crap. We should.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that we want to be able to provide on, even if you don't want to open your own practice or you don't want to run a hospital, like you said, being an entrepreneur, it's not like the crap you see on Instagram where it's, hey, work 20 hours a week and everything will be great. It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of decisions to be made.
A lot of sacrifice.
Yeah, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of responsibilities. So it's not for everybody. But if you want to undertake it, you can be successful.
Yeah.
You just got to do it the right way.
Yeah, and there's incredible support systems to help you. It's just identifying which ones that are aligned with you. So and for us, we hope to be a part of that journey with you guys. Is that you're following us and connect with us on who you'd like to see here on the podcast, so we can pick their brain, figure out what are the best things that they're using, so that you can use it yourself. And then for us, we can use it with our clients as well.
Yeah,
cool.
So as we kind of wrap up here, any last little parting, words of wisdom, or as they say in medicine, clinical pearls that you'd want to leave off with our people here?
Yeah. So the first thing is to continue to be curious. For me personally, like that's kind of where everything starts. Is like just be curious. Entertain the idea that maybe you don't know everything. Entertain the idea that maybe there's some that what you know could be wrong, and that it's just working kind of half-assed. So we believe it's okay, but it's maybe not. And so if we just start with that and we're uncovering stuff, you're going to find out the things that are aligned that are aligned with you. You're going to find out the things that could improve your life in some way. And I'd rather be on that side of the table as far as providing things that can challenge your thought process and even giving you guys tactical, practical advice, not just from ourselves, things that work for us, but bringing in some of these amazing guests that can make such a difference in your life, not just professionally, but ultimately personally.
That was damn good.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, I think we should wrap up. What I'd like to tell you guys is just do something. Take some action. Concepts are great, ideas are great, knowledge is phenomenal, but unless you're doing something with it, it doesn't matter. And whether you're happy with your situation, whether it's in business or, work-life balance, things like that, complaints and frustration doesn't change the situation. Only actions will do that. So what I want you guys to focus on as we, go through these podcasts with you is to really focus in on extrapolating ideas that you can put into play right now. Don't wait till next week or next month or say something came up. Start now and start taking control of your practice, start taking control of your career, and start taking control of your life. All right, welcome to the follow-up, which is going to be a little bit of a bonus episode based on today's first episode, and it's going to help explain what you can take and apply to your healthcare practice to make yourself grow and sustainable for the long term. Now, we talked all about LOCS itself today, which is leadership, operations, culture, and strategy. Before we dive into some actionable items that you can do and start today, I want you to really fully understand what the cost of LOCS is to your practice and why you really should be focusing on these 4 specific anchors. Now, it's hard for some of you to really look at your business on a day-to-day basis and figure out exactly what's missing that's maybe costing you money or revenue. But I want you to understand that it's a very simple concept, that if there's a deficiency with your leadership, or you have lack of systems, you have a toxic culture, or you don't have any strategies on how to grow your practice, any one of those could potentially lead to a revenue loss of 6 figures a year. Now, you might say, well, how do you know that, Dan? It's because I was in a position where I cost a company 6 figures a year because I didn't understand these principles. So I want you to fully understand that first. You don't know what you don't know, meaning you don't see where you have gaps in either a system or where leadership is affecting the company as a whole. And that's where I really want you to start, is to just identify what can actually be improved. And there's this concept that has really significantly helped myself personally and professionally, which is just constant and never-ending improvement. And this is something that I got from the Tony Robbins world, where no matter how good things are, how can we make them better? And it doesn't mean that you are never satisfied with what you have. And it doesn't mean you don't take time to be grateful and appreciative. It just simply means if things are outstanding, can you get 0.01% better? Can you get 1% better? If things are good, can you get them great? And I remember a long time ago, I had a CEO who was in a marketing meeting, and the marketing director straight up asked him, when is enough enough? Because he applied this principle, which is things are great, how can we make it better? So I want you to start understanding, what does that process look like for your organization? Your sales team, your doctors, your intake coordinators, how can they all be better? How can you be better as, the person who is running the organization? So that's the one principle I want you to really start with, is what can we do to improve ourselves? And then the second thing that I really want you to focus on when it comes to leadership, operations, culture, and your strategic growth is, what does a 10 out of 10 look like for you in each area? And what I mean by that is, what does a 10 out of 10 leader look like for you? What do you need to see every single day that tells you that your leadership team is operating at its pinnacle? And what do you need to see from your systems and from your culture? And the reason that this is really important is that we all like to kind of assume that things are going really great, right? You ask somebody, hey, how would you rate the employee that you trained? Oh, they're wonderful. And in reality, we're not leaving any room for growth. And there is this aspect that we always want to make things seem better than they are when it comes down to us. It's very easy to look at a system or an employee, and you had nothing to do with that person or that system, and you can give it an accurate assessment and say, that's operating at 80%. But if you're the one that trained that employee, or you're the one that developed the system, you're going to be more apt to give yourself a better grade. And nothing against you, it's just human psychology. So you have to really identify, what does a 10 out of 10 leader look like? What do our systems look like? What do I need to see to know that they're a 10 out of 10? And we're going to be diving into this. But a good example would be, hey, I want to see a 10 out of 10 call intake system that doesn't drop phone calls, that actually returns patients' phone calls within 20 minutes. Well, if your return call time is 3 hours, are you at a 10 out of 10? Right? And this one principle has greatly elevated not just myself, but the practices that I've worked with to help identify, what are we actually shooting for? What are the goals? And what do we need to see every single day, action-wise and behavior-wise, by employees and by ownership and leadership, that's going to help us identify where we need to be versus, are we at a 7 or a 5? And what do we need to do to kind of fill that gap between where we want to be and where we're at? So start with these two concepts. How can you focus on constant and never-ending improvement? What are 10 out of 10 throughout your whole company? Hope you got some major value out of this. See you guys next time.